45% of men under 25 have never asked a woman out in person. 63% of young men are single. And the numbers keep climbing. An entire generation of men is quietly disappearing from dating, from friendships, from society itself. And today we're getting into why this is happening and what nobody wants to admit.
45% of men 18 to 25 have never approached a woman in person?
Never asked a woman out in person. And what they're up against, think about it, our economy literally rests on 10 companies now, often referred to as the Magnificent 10. And they do several things, but quite frankly, they're in the business of enragement, polarization, and then sequestering young people from all other activities.
And that's only getting worse given where AI is going. I mean, with like, agents and chatbots who are, sexually clad anime type figures chatting with young men.
Well, it starts pretty innocent. When you use AI, have you noticed the prompts that are almost irresistible at the end? Let me put this in a series of tweets. Right. Before you know it, you're 3 hours deep. Right. But effectively, these companies have attached the entire economy and literally trillions of dollars to trying to get people to, or trying to convince young people, specifically young men who are more susceptible, because quite frankly...
Scott Galloway hits it right. Big tech designed the perfect trap. Give young men endless content, dopamine on demand, and zero reason to leave the house. These companies profit from your isolation, and nobody in power wants to fix it because lonely men are profitable men.
What do you think young guys are doing with their time and energy? Porn, social media, video games, the beast, the false prophet, and the Antichrist. That's what they're doing. Single guys in your 20s, here's what we know. 68% of guys in their 20s today are not dating a woman, not intending to date a woman, have no actual interest in a relationship with a female, and are making no movement toward marriage whatsoever. The last few years, a lot of young men just moved home with their mother. They have no intention of ever moving out until they can find a girlfriend in her 20s or 30s with a good job and low expectations. And then their hope is to move into her house and have her pick up where mom left off. And what these are generational curses and bad patterns that are destroying young men. Destroying young men. And today, young men are an endangered species. And everything in our culture is to absolutely remove their masculinity and to ruin their legacy.
68% of young men aren't dating. And before you blame laziness, understand what they're up against. A culture that mocks them for trying, apps that crush their self-esteem, and a society that has no idea what to do with men who don't fit the mold.
I'm going to start by saying something completely unsurprising. Dating is really hard. Today, it involves a lot of swiping and messaging and meeting up with strangers. It can also just be really emotionally draining to keep getting excited about a prospect and then disappointed all over again. Especially if you've always imagined a partner will be part of your future. It can feel like without that person, you're just waiting for life to start. Researchers told me that this can be a kind of ambiguous loss, which means that because you don't know whether to keep hoping or to let go, it's hard to get closure and to grieve. So some people decide to just quit. I recently talked to people who want a relationship but have sworn off dating altogether. They just wanted to close the door in their mind so that they could finally move on. And they all told me that they'd found some peace without the anxiety of worrying whether someone would text them back or whether they said something wrong. They actually started investing more.
People are quitting dating entirely. Not because they don't want love, but because the emotional cost of constant rejection outweighs the hope. When swiping becomes a second job that pays nothing, eventually you stop showing up.
Do we have an epidemic of loneliness, or do we have an epidemic of undateable men? Because the way people will preach about how, it's because dating apps and social media or OnlyFans addiction, but you want to know who is the number one user of all of those things? Men. It's men, which has developed this incel culture where they want to adhere to these traditional values, where they felt entitled to things like a woman. Yet I'm like, okay, do you have the financial stability to buy a home with a wife who can't work and have 3 kids and financially support all of them? No, they are not financially stable, emotionally stable, mentally stable. Like, there is no value. There is not value in the partnership, which makes them feel isolated and angry. And then they have to project that insecurity onto somebody else, namely women, right? It can't be our own fault. We can't come to terms with our own inadequacy. We have to convince ourselves it's the society, it's the other people, it's the this, when in actuality, you have nothing to offer.
She says it's an epidemic of undateable men. And she's partly right. Some men do need to step up. But calling an entire generation undateable doesn't solve the problem. It just pushes more men into silence. You can't shame people out of loneliness. So we've got the data. Men are checking out. But here's where it gets interesting. Because the people who should be helping are actually making it worse. Let's look at the other side.
I don't know if you guys know this. There's like a male loneliness epidemic. You guys know? Clap it up if you heard of the male loneliness. Yeah, just the women. That's cool. And yeah, if you don't know, basically so many men in this country are reporting that they have no one close to them, that they're declaring it an epidemic. And it's crazy because I didn't know epidemic could be lonely guy. You know, I thought epidemic was like medical virus, like COVID-19. But the men in this country are chronically unfucked. They are medically without kisses. And it's terrifying, you know, because it's the first epidemic that spreads through no contact. And the male loneliness epidemic, God, that's so long to say. Can we just call it No Hose 19? I feel for them, you know, because, and if it's medical, get them treatment, you know, send these boys to an improv class, you know. Have you been to an improv show? Okay. I know an orgy when I see one.
He's making jokes about it, but the pain behind the comedy is real. Men are using humor to talk about something they can't discuss seriously because the moment a man says he's lonely, the internet tells him it's his own fault.
Let's talk about the male loneliness epidemic, and I want to address this towards men, even though most of my followers are women, so maybe you guys can share this with the men you love. In the grand scheme of things, in the long narrative arc, this is a good thing. Change is hard, and people are less likely to do it when they're comfortable, when they're getting all of their needs met. But the world does need men to change, and men need to change in order for them to be happy. And the only pathway to that change was going to be a loneliness epidemic. This was bound to happen. And we women, we cannot fix this for you. This is an inside job. I mean, we have tried. Listen, I am a very persuasive person, and I set my mind in my last relationship to convincing my partner that he was enough, that he was good enough, that he was worthy of love. I thought if anybody in the world could convince him, it would be me. I need only show him how I see him. I need only show him the lens through which I see him through for him to realize that he is worthy of love. If you followed my content for any amount of time, you know how that went, right? I don't even think I moved the needle. I actually think
This is the kind of content men actually need. Not mockery, not shame. Just someone saying, I see you and this is what you can do about it. The solution starts with honesty, not judgment.
Is the male loneliness epidemic actually an evolutionary filter? Currently, 50% of males are not in a romantic relationship, nor do they have the promise of one anytime soon. And what I'm proposing here is that this epidemic isn't just a social tragedy, it's actually an iteration, a harsh iteration of natural selection. Essentially, men who fail to meet the increasingly selective mate criteria are going to experience social and romantic exclusion. This could act as evolutionary pressure, gradually reducing the prevalence and ability to pass on less desirable traits. We do need to remember that evolution acts slowly, like it is multi-generational and takes time, but we may be witnessing the first generation or two of a new kind of selective filter, one that has been brought on by the generally more selective female of our species, women, having more power, more self-autonomy.
The evolutionary filter theory is interesting but dangerous, because it implies that the men who are struggling deserve to be filtered out. And that's not science. That's social Darwinism dressed up in a lab coat.
Incels will do anything except self-reflect. They'll do anything except go to therapy. Because this man swiped 2 million times on Tinder and he got one date. And people are calling for more attention for the male loneliness epidemic. These women, these beasts of women who are not wanting to go on a date with this man. Why would they do that to him? He's the real victim. But then you look at the photos on his profile and this is one of them. Look at the jumper. But no, it must be that women have too high a standards. It's not that he's swiping 2 million times with this photo and then using this as an experiment to prove the male loneliness epidemic. The combination of this experiment, I guess, or of his reality and him weaponizing it to try to make women look like the bad people, as well as wearing this jumper, kind of just proves our point. Men aren't lonely because of women. Men are lonely because of men.
Listen, I know it's really fun to make fun of the male loneliness epidemic. Like, maybe if you treated us like human beings, we would actually want to hang out with you. But here's the thing, it's not real. There is no male loneliness epidemic. Women are actually just as lonely as men. The only difference is that society doesn't really care when women suffer. So you're not going to hear about it in the news. And if you don't believe it, Pew Research Center came out with a report last month that found men and women are they have equal levels of loneliness. So what's the deal? I don't know. Eve bit the apple.
Everyone is lonely. That's true. But dismissing men's specific struggles doesn't help women either. This isn't a competition. Lonely men don't build healthy families. They don't show up in communities. When men disappear, everyone loses.
I'd rather stay inside and play video games. I tried to date online, but women think I'm lame. I work a 9 to 5, but not enough to save. They told me I should cry, but no one sees my motherfucking pain.
19 seconds. That's all it took to describe what millions of men feel every single day. Working until 9 to 5, but it's not enough. Trying to connect, but being called lame. Told to open up, but nobody's listening. That is the epidemic. Here's what I want every man watching this to hear. You are not invisible. The fact that society doesn't know how to support you doesn't mean you're broken. It means the system is. Build your circle, find your purpose, and stop waiting for permission to matter, because you already do. Subscribe if this resonated. We're not done talking about this.